Hello friends, today's video is sponsored by Mobalytics. Mobalytics is a site that allows you to analyze your League of Legends skill, diagnose problems in your gameplay, and help you improve. One neat way they do this is through their Gamer Performance Index, or GPI. GPI is a really neat feature that breaks down your gameplay into 8 categories, telling you what you do well versus what you do poorly. For instance, I am clearly an amazing farmer with god-tier mechanics, but I also tilt super hard, so that's something I think I'll work on. GPI is just one of 4 neat features that Mobalytics provides, so if you'd like to check them out yourself for free, there is a link to the open beta in the description down below. Here's a question: when should you play those champions? You know who I'm talking about. The weird champions, the really old ones that don't really have a place in League of Legends, but players have kind of mishmashed them into kind of fitting into a few modern roles. They're all characters who have very high win ratios, 53% win ratio, 54% win ratio, sometimes 55% win ratios in Platinum and above, but they all have incredibly low pick ratios because of, whatever reason. Oftentimes we dismiss these champions because, hey, those win ratios are only being dragged up because only people who main those characters are playing them and succeeding. But even if that's true, that still presents an opportunity. If people who main a certain champion are getting, on average, a 55% win ratio, maybe you should go ahead and start maining that champion. That's what we're discussing today. All of these different characters, whether they're top laners, mid laners, junglers, someone like Pantheon, Tryndamere, Aurelion Sol, or Wukong, all of these characters that fill these really weird niches, when is it that you should go and start playing them yourself? Now, just a quick note at the start of the video here, a lot of different characters in all sorts of different roles can be applied to these loose definitions I'm throwing out at the beginning of this video. So we're going to mostly be focusing on a single example of Quinn, but a lot of the advice and information thrown out in this video can be applied in different ways to all of these different champions that we constantly see becoming popular through getting these really high win rates in really weird roles. But anyway, no more stalling. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Kicking things off with, let's ask, what is it that makes these champions good? Like, yeah, I get it. There's only a few people playing these characters, and those who are playing them clearly are maining them, and those mains are dragging the win rates up. But there's other individuals out there that have very low win ratios with very low pick ratios. The only people who are playing Tahm Kench top lane are Tahm Kench mains, but they're nowhere near a 50% win rate on average. Same deal with Mordekaiser, same deal with Rumble. Just because you have a small pool of dedicated players playing individual champions doesn't automatically mean that they're going to be able to get high win rates. These characters do have some strengths inherent to the roles they're being played in. Quinn serves as an excellent example here because even though she was very clearly meant to be an AD carry when Riot created her, she actually might be one of the best top laners in the game if you're just talking about the laning phase. 1 versus 1, Quinn beats almost every popular top laner in the game right now. There are a few counter picks that she has, but they're all very weird champions that you don't see being played much. Stuff like Wukong top lane, Kayle, or Urgot. When you go and compare her to some of the more popular top laners, though, her win rates get as high as 57% versus Darius, 57% against Vladimir, 58% against Fiora, and 58% against Riven. Normally, when you're thinking about a champion that counters another one like that, you're not thinking about a champion that's able to get win rates so incredibly high. The reason she's able to dominate so many lanes is because she just has the perfect kit for top lane, being a champion who's ranged and able to harass melee champions and harass champions without movement speed is already a pretty exciting skill to have for any top laner. But she's also beating stuff like Vladimir, who are ranged characters as well, and that's because her kit also allows her to out damage almost every other top laner in laning phase. Through properly manipulating her passive, you're able to deal ridiculous damage, pretty much out damaging everyone else out there, and just 1v1 everyone to death, zoning them from CS while also having a surprising amount of weird movement. One of the keys to top lane is you kind of have to have a little bit of movement to escape jungle ganks and to be ready to jump back when someone tries to dive in on you. And the fact that Quinn can use her E both defensively and offensively to either run away from an opponent or chase them down and get a kill, I mean, that duality is really impressive for a top laner to have, and it's really weird that this AD carry has that skill. Most melee champions will get kited, most divers won't be able to stick on her, and most ranged characters will just get out damaged, so Quinn ends up being a phenomenal top laner in almost every single matchup. All of this fantastic laning phase allows her to get very big leads early on in a game, so she's super easy to 1v1 opponents, get early kills on them, or at the very least zone them from CS and experience if they're playing too passively. And then once she gets that lead, she has a quality that every other top lane champion envies. She's able to roam all around the map very quickly with her ultimate and then transfer her lead to other lanes, allowing her to carry her teammates maybe better than any other early game top lane champion. She also has kind of decent scaling once she builds a couple of items, so her mid game is very strong, even if she does fall off if the match gets too extra long. But from a pure focus on her laning, her early game, her mid game, and her carry style, she fits very well for solo queue. She's able to abuse bad opponents in laning phase, transfer her leads to teammates. I mean, she's just a great top lane champion, if I'm being honest here. Most of the other champions that fall into the category I'm describing in this video have other similar positive qualities. There are other champions that have really strong strengths for the role that they're in, even if it's not something as simple as win lane, win game. Whether it's Aurelion Sol and his roaming potential, or something like Tryndamere and his split pushing and scaling 1v1 later on in a game compared to the early game of Quinn. I mean, all these champions surprisingly have stuff that they really do quite well that not many people are aware of and not many people acknowledge. On top of that, they also have some unseen positives that you wouldn't really think about normally, like meta changes don't really affect them. If there's something that's very overpowered in the game currently, like bruisers or some item that everyone seems to be building, well, if Riot ends up nerfing that, that's not really something that will affect these kinds of characters. If you think bruisers are too strong right now and Riot goes and either nerfs certain bruiser champions, or maybe they go and nerf something like Sterix Gauge, well, they obviously aren't nerfing the characters like Quinn, and Quinn isn't someone that's building stuff like Sterix Gauge, so this is how these characters stay at very high win rates for so long. They have these really strange specific builds that basically fly under the radar. But if everything is so great for all these champions, what is it that makes them bad? Why is it that not everybody is playing Quinn top lane? And I am glossing over some pretty big problems that these characters suffer from. Everything is not peaches and cream. Going back to our Quinn example, what exactly it is that makes her bad? Well, for starters, she is not a top laner. The top laners generally fill a very specific role in League of Legends where they're relatively tanky, they have some hard crowd control, and they can either go in and dive to burst a character in the back line of the enemy team if there's someone like a bruiser, or they're at the very least tanking a lot of damage and providing crowd control if there's someone that's more of a tank. Quinn can't do either of these things. She obviously doesn't have heavy CC like a tank does, and she can't really dive into the back line without getting blown up because she doesn't have the innate tankiness that bruisers have, and she doesn't have the build path that bruisers have. When you're picking a Quinn top lane on your team, you're also really handicapping your team because now there are only two roles, jungle and support, that have to play a full tank, because if you go and get a Lee Sin jungle, Janna support, then suddenly your team is going to be so easy for the enemy to blow up. We've talked before about how League of Legends is becoming very team oriented, and a champion like this will really show it. You will have team fights in almost every single game of League of Legends. You are very rarely going to be getting the enemy team to surrender at 15 minutes. And if you have a bad team composition where every single character on your team has less than 2,000 health, then you will lose the game no matter how hard you win laning phase. That's more of the obvious answer though. There's also something that people don't often consider when looking at these characters. Really, the big problem that they suffer from, even more than the team composition issue, is they're all or nothing champions. This is why these champions are bad. They cannot come back if they lose laning phase. While it is very easy for you to win your laning phase and have a great opportunity to carry that early lead to win the game, that's the only way that you win the game. If you just go maybe kind of even, or God forbid you lose the laning phase, then the game is over no matter what. On a normal top laner like Jax, you can come back from some early deaths. Or on someone like Aurelia, yeah, at least you have your scaling, right? Singed, you can get super tanky even if you go 1 in 10 on him, so you don't gotta worry about that. If you're picking Quinn though, you're going all in on the idea that you're gonna snowball an early lead and then just out damage everyone on the enemy team until until they surrender. It is super easy to do on these champions because of all their positives, but you're going to get screwed over really hard if you fall too far behind because you can't come back, and the enemy team knows that too. You're going to be getting ganked non-stop. You're going to be getting focused down by the enemy team. I mean, even the golds and silvers and bronze players will know that if they can kill you, then they're just going to get a free win. I should also mention here, this obviously applies to the early game champions in our category like Quinn and Pantheon, but it also applies to a lot of the other champions out there with better scaling. Even if you play someone like Tryndamere, who has very good scaling into the late game, you can't afford to fall too far behind in the early game because you're never going to hit that power spike you need to. You really need to be going for those early level 2 kills and stuff like that to give you your early lead, and if you don't, then it's going to be so difficult. But hey, we aren't trying to be too negative in this video. Let's go ahead and figure this out. When is it worth it to play these champions? Well, firstly, we need to mention you should only play them if you're able to play at least 10 games beforehand to get everything understood about how they work as a character. I mean, when I first started playing Quinn for this video, I was pretty horrible. I was dying all over the place. Even when I got early kills in laning phase, I didn't realize how squishy I was, and I would be getting killed, get all that shutdown gold lost, and the enemy team would actually carry pretty easily against me. It wasn't until I got a lot of games under my belt that I figured out my limits. I figured out how I can go and escape from jungle ganks and prevent myself from dying on someone that's so squishy, and it was only then that I really got to start abusing the character. Remember, just one of those early deaths on a single jungle gank can completely throw the game down the toilet for you and cause you to lose. You have to make sure you understand how to minimize your mistakes and prevent those failings. Also, you really should try and play champions that you know your time won't go to waste while learning them. If you go and try and learn someone like Volibear top, but he gets countered by full-on tanks, and maybe Riot starts talking about how they're going to try and bring full tanks back into the meta top lane, now might not be the best time to play him. The advantage of these champions is that they get their high win rates, obviously, but they get to keep those high win rates for an extended period of time. Try and get on that hype train of something like Pantheon when he had the #1 win rate top lane every single patch for 2 years. That's what you're trying to do when you go for this strategy. Don't just think of this as someone that you're abusing for a single patch. But lastly, and maybe most importantly, only play these characters if you know the enemy team is going to try and shut you down and exactly how to stop them from doing it. If you play Quinn, you're gonna get ganked. You're gonna get ganked a lot. You're gonna get ganked even in the lowest of low ratings because everyone knows, you know, if you're a laner's getting zoned by that much CS, you can't afford to leave him alone. All of these champions have counters, whether it's ganks, whether it's grievous wounds, whether it's just passive playstyle. Make sure you know how people are going to try and play around you and how you can still get your leads to snowball a game. But hey, there you go. Hopefully these weird puzzle box champions are now a little bit easier for you to understand. I honestly think that they are great characters to main if you're looking for someone to main long term, as long as you pick a good champion that you know, their counter picks aren't gonna immediately become super good in the next patch. By the way, I appreciate you guys watching this video all the way to the very end if you're still listening to my voice right now. Lately, I've been kind of depressed. This past week in particular was kind of awful for me, so I appreciate that you guys did not just ditch me when I dropped off the face of YouTube and didn't really make any content. So thanks, I appreciate that a lot, seriously. We'll be getting back to more regular content soon, hopefully, he says for the 100th time. But anyway, I'll see you all then. Until then, thank you very much for watching, good luck in solo queue, and have a wonderful day.